Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. I'm Brian, and if you're interested in, you know, learning more about health and how to optimize your well-being,
Yep.
this is the place to be. And we have tons more over on the Detox Health YouTube channel, so make sure to check that out. Today, I am so happy to welcome back a familiar voice. It's Chelsea.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Chelsea, you have been such a valuable part of these deep dives with your expertise in nutrition.
Yeah, it's always great to be back here and chat with you and explore these fascinating areas of health.
Awesome. Yeah, so today we're going to be taking a close look at something I think is really important for all of us, and that is building and keeping our bones strong and healthy throughout life.
Absolutely.
And we've gathered some great information from trusted sources like Healthline, WebMD, and the Mayo Clinic.
Love those.
And we're going to try to distill this down for you guys so we can give you the most useful and natural strategies that you can actually use without getting bogged down in
Yes.
all the details.
Too much information.
We want those surprising and valuable nuggets.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff that you can take away and actually apply.
Actionable stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess let's just jump right into it. So why is bone health so important?
Well, bones might seem like they're just these static things in our body, but they're so dynamic.
Right.
And they're constantly, being remodeled and changing.
Wow.
The Mayo Clinic actually highlights that bones are like the scaffolding of your body. So they are protecting all of your vital organs, anchoring your muscles for movement, and they even store calcium, which is really important.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they're always under construction.
So you're telling me these aren't the same bones I had when I was a kid?
No, they are not.
Okay.
So the old bone is broken down, new bone is built. It's this constant construction project.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I guess when we're younger, we're, making new bone faster than it's breaking down?
Yeah, we're building it up.
Okay.
So you reach what's called peak bone mass. And that usually happens around age 30, according to Healthline and the Mayo Clinic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's like the strongest our bones will ever be.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like the peak strength.
Okay, so what happens after that peak, though? Does it just all go downhill?
Well, the remodeling continues, but the balance shifts a little bit. So you tend to lose a bit more bone than you gain. And that can lead to osteopenia initially, which is lower bone mass.
Okay.
And then over time, it can progress to osteoporosis.
Got it.
Which is where your bones become weaker and much more susceptible to fractures.
Yeah, I mean, this really underscores why building a strong foundation early on and then actively maintaining that is so important.
For sure.
So for anyone listening who, wants to really take charge of their health,
Yeah.
this whole remodeling process and this peak bone mass, it really sets the stage for long-term health.
Absolutely. It's not just about, preventing a fall later in life. It's about maximizing your bone health throughout your whole life.
I love that. Okay, so I think it makes a lot of sense to talk about, the things that we can do to actually improve our bone health. And
Yes.
obviously you are the nutrition expert.
Yes.
So let's start there.
Okay, let's start with vegetables.
Okay, so all my veggie-loving friends are going to be happy about this.
Yes.
But how do they contribute to bone health?
Well, according to Healthline,
Okay.
vegetables are packed with vitamin C. And what's interesting is that vitamin C actually stimulates the cells that are responsible for building new bone.
So it's kind of like giving our, construction crew the fuel they need
Yes, exactly.
to build.
It's like fuel for the construction crew.
I love it.
And it also acts as an antioxidant, so it can help protect those bone cells from damage.
So it's providing the building blocks, but also protecting the site.
Yes, exactly.
I love it.
And there are studies that have linked eating lots of green and yellow vegetables to higher bone mineral density in children.
Okay.
And it also helps young adults maintain bone mass. Yeah, and Healthline even mentioned the study where women over 50 who ate onions regularly had a lower risk of osteoporosis. It was
Yeah.
like 20% lower.
Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have necessarily connected onions with bone health.
Right.
But that's really interesting.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And then another study found that eating more broccoli cabbage and parsley actually decreased bone turnover in women.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's good.
Meaning that less old bone was being broken down.
That's great.
And WebMD also chimes in. They highlight dark leafy greens like bok choy, kale, collard green, turnip greens
Okay.
as excellent sources of calcium and vitamin K. And they said that 1 cup of cooked turnip greens has about 200 milligrams of calcium.
Wow, that's a good amount.
Yeah, so load up on those greens.
It sounds like we should all be embracing our vegetables,
Yeah.
maybe adding in a few more onions as well.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the one that everyone, thinks of when they think about bones.
Yeah.
And that's calcium.
Calcium. It is the most abundant mineral in our bones.
Mm-hmm.
Both Healthline and the Mayo Clinic emphasize this. It's the primary structural component.
Yeah.
And because our bones are constantly being remodeled, we need a constant supply of calcium to support that strength.
Okay, so how much calcium do we need every day?
So the recommended dietary allowance, or RDA,
Okay.
is about 1,000 milligrams per day for most adults.
Okay.
Teenagers need a little bit more, around 1,300.
Okay.
And older women need about 1,200.
Okay.
But one really important point to remember is that our bodies don't absorb huge amounts of calcium at once.
Okay.
So Healthline says that if you consume more than 500 milligrams of calcium in a single meal, you'll absorb less of it
Oh, wow.
than if you spread your intake throughout the day.
So it's better to have it little and often.
Little and often, yeah.
Okay, that's really good to know.
Yeah.
So where can we get calcium?
Well, dairy products are usually the first thing that come to mind.
Yeah.
And they are good sources. But there are a lot of other great options, too.
Yeah.
So the Mayo Clinic and WebMD both list things like turnip greens, salmon, especially canned salmon with the bones,
Okay.
sardines, tuna, soy products like tofu, almonds, and almond butter.
That's a lot of good options.
Yeah, there are a lot of options. And
Yeah.
WebMD specifically points out that canned salmon with bones is a particularly good choice because those bones are so soft and digestible.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and they also mention calcium fortified plant-based milks and orange juice as good alternatives.
Okay.
And calcium-enriched tofu is another great source, particularly for people who don't eat dairy.
Yeah, it's great to have so many options, especially for people with dietary restrictions.
Absolutely.
I also remember reading something about, is it better to get calcium from food or from supplements?
Yeah, Healthline touched on that.
Okay.
And they said that one study actually suggested that prioritizing calcium from whole foods
Okay.
might be better for heart health than relying on supplements.
That makes sense.
So the general recommendation is to aim for food sources.
Yeah, food first.
Whenever possible.
Okay, so we can't talk about calcium without talking about its partner in crime,
Yes.
vitamin D.
Vitamin D.
So what does vitamin D do?
So vitamin D's main role in bone health is to help our bodies absorb the calcium that we were just talking about.
Got it.
So both Healthline and the Mayo Clinic really emphasize that without enough vitamin D, even if you're eating a ton of calcium, your body can't really use it effectively.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Healthline suggests aiming for a blood level of at least 30 nanograms per milliliter to help protect against bone issues.
Okay, so how much vitamin D do we need?
So the Mayo Clinic recommends 600 international units, or IUs, per day for adults 19 to 70.
Okay.
And then that increases to 800 for those over 71.
Okay.
So you need more as you get older.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so you can get vitamin D from your diet. Oily fish, like salmon, trout, tuna, mackerel are good sources. And then some foods are fortified with vitamin D, like milk, cereals, orange juice. And of course, our bodies produce vitamin D when our skin is exposed to sunlight. But Healthline points out that vitamin D deficiency is actually quite common worldwide.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so many people might actually need to supplement to reach optimal levels.
Especially if they're not getting a lot of sun.
Yeah, especially in the winter.
Yeah. Or if you live, somewhere that doesn't get a lot of sun.
Exactly.
It might be worth talking to your doctor to get your levels checked.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so what about vitamin K?
Oh, vitamin K.
So I always hear about vitamin K for blood clotting.
You're right. Vitamin K is essential for blood clotting. But vitamin K2 specifically plays a huge role in bone health.
Really?
Yeah. So Healthline explains that it supports bone health by modifying a protein called osteocalcin.
Okay.
And this modification allows osteocalcin to bind minerals to our bones,
Okay.
and it helps prevent calcium from being lost.
So it's almost like a traffic controller,
Yeah.
making sure that calcium is actually getting to the bones.
Yes,
And
exactly.
not just floating around.
It's directing the traffic.
I love that.
Yeah.
So there are two main forms of vitamin K2,
Yes.
MK4 and MK7.
That's right.
And MK4 is found in foods like liver, eggs, meat.
Yeah, in smaller amounts.
Yeah.
And MK7 is found in fermented foods like cheese, sauerkraut, and natto,
Oh.
which is a Japanese fermented soybean dish.
Interesting.
And Healthline mentions studies that suggest that both forms can help modify osteocalcin,
Okay.
and they may contribute to increased bone density.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit.
Okay.
We've talked about, a lot of vitamins and minerals, but what about protein?
Protein.
So protein is important for so many bodily functions.
Yes.
What about our bones?
Well, protein is a major component of bone.
Okay.
Healthline says that about 50% of bone is actually made up of protein.
Wow.
So it's a fundamental building material right along with calcium.
I would have thought it was mostly just calcium.
Yeah, it's both.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And research has shown that low protein intake can actually hinder calcium absorption
Wow.
and impact the rate of bone formation and breakdown.
So it's not just about strong muscles.
No, it's about strong bones, too.
It's about strong bones.
Yeah,
I love that I've always kind of associated protein with muscle
of
building
course.
and repair.
Yeah.
So this is good to know.
Yeah, it's multifaceted.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And there were some earlier concerns that high-protein diets could lead to calcium loss.
Okay.
But more recent studies are showing that this isn't really the case if you're eating, up to 100 grams of protein a day, especially if your diet includes plant-based foods and adequate calcium.
Okay.
And actually, studies are now suggesting that higher protein intake is linked to better bone density, particularly in older women.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Healthline cited a large study that followed over 144,000 postmenopausal women for 6 years.
Okay.
And they found that higher protein intake was associated with a lower risk of forearm fractures and significantly higher bone density in the hip and spine.
Wow, so that's huge.
Yeah, and then when people are trying to lose weight, diets higher in protein can help preserve bone mass.
Oh, that's really good to know, too.
Yeah, so getting enough protein is really important for bone health.
Especially as we get older.
Yes, especially as we age.
That's really interesting. So we've talked about a lot of, the big players,
Yeah.
calcium, protein, all that.
Yeah.
What about some of the maybe lesser known minerals like magnesium and potassium?
Yes, these are also really key players. So Healthline and WebMD highlight magnesium's role in activating vitamin D,
Okay.
which we know is really important for calcium absorption. And WebMD points out that sweet potatoes are a really good
Oh.
source of magnesium.
Okay.
They have about 31 milligrams in a medium baked one.
Wow.
And they're also high in potassium,
That's awesome.
which helps neutralize acids in the body that can leach calcium from bones.
Oh, wow.
So both of these minerals are really contributing to bone health.
So sweet potatoes are like a 2-for-1.
Yeah, they're a powerhouse.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, what about zinc?
Zinc.
We don't often hear about that in relation to bone health.
Right. Zinc is a trace mineral, meaning we only need a small amount,
Right.
but it's still really important. So Healthline explains that zinc helps form the mineral component of our bones.
Okay.
It supports the cells that build new bone, and it prevents excessive breakdown of old bone.
Got it.
And good sources include beef, shrimp, spinach, flax seeds, oysters, pumpkin seeds.
Okay, so eating a variety of foods is a good way to make sure you're getting enough zinc.
Yes, a varied diet is key.
Okay, awesome.
Hmm.
And then what about omega-3 fatty acids?
Oh, omega-3s.
So we know those are good for our hearts, but do they do anything for our bones?
Yeah, so omega-3s are known for their anti-inflammatory properties, and Healthline mentions that they might also protect against bone loss as we age.
Interesting.
And it's also important to consider the balance of omega-6 to omega-3 fats in our diets.
Okay.
So a lower ratio, ideally 4-to-1 or lower, is considered beneficial.
Okay.
And while fatty fish are well-known sources of omega-3s,
Right.
plant-based sources like chia seeds, flax seeds, and walnuts also provide them.
Oh.
And WebMD reminds us that fatty fish like salmon also provide a good dose of vitamin D. And going back to that canned salmon with bones,
Yeah.
You're getting your omega-3s and your calcium.
2-for-1 again.
The win-win.
That's awesome. So it's really all interconnected.
It really is.
It seems like, our bones really need us to be taking a holistic approach to our nutrition.
Yes, a holistic approach is key.
Okay, awesome. So WebMD also mentioned a few other potentially beneficial foods.
They did.
What were those?
So they highlighted grapefruit and other citrus fruits
Oh, okay.
for their vitamin C content. Figs were mentioned as a good source of calcium, potassium, and magnesium.
Okay.
And they noted that dried figs are particularly high in calcium.
Dried figs.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
And then prunes might help improve bone density by slowing down bone breakdown.
Prunes.
Yeah, they're good for more than just digestion.
Who knew?
And even molasses has a little bit of calcium.
Okay, so there's all kinds of foods that can support our bone health.
Yes, there's a whole variety.
Awesome. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what we put into our bodies.
Yeah.
What about what we do with our bodies?
Exercise.
Yes. Exercise is so important for building and maintaining strong bones. So both Healthline and the Mayo Clinic emphasize the importance of weight-bearing and high-impact exercises. These types of activities actually stimulate new bone formation.
So it's like telling our bones,
yes,
hey, we need you to be strong.
Exactly. They put a healthy amount of stress on your bones. So think brisk walking, jogging, dancing, climbing stairs, playing sports like soccer, tennis, pickleball.
Yeah, I love that.
Those are all great.
So things that are challenging
Yes.
in a positive way.
Yeah, challenging your bones. And studies have shown that these kinds of exercises can lead to increases in bone mineral density, strength, and size. And they can help reduce bone turnover and inflammation, especially in older adults.
That's great.
Yeah.
So it's not just about impact, though, right?
Right.
Strength training is important, too.
Strength training is also very beneficial. So Healthline notes that it can help protect against bone loss in both younger and older women, even those with low bone density or breast cancer. And it can contribute to increased hip bone density, which is crucial for preventing fractures.
So lifting weights or using resistance bands can also help build stronger bones.
Yes, definitely. It's about challenging your muscles, which then puts force on your bones and signals them to become stronger.
I love that. Okay, so it sounds like the best approach is a well-rounded one.
Yeah.
That incorporates both weight-bearing cardio and strength training.
Yes, a combination of both is ideal.
Okay, awesome. So we've talked about nutrition, exercise. Are there any other lifestyle factors that can impact bone health?
Yeah, there are a few other important ones.
Okay.
So maintaining a stable, healthy weight is crucial.
Okay.
Healthline and the Mayo Clinic both point out that being underweight can increase the risk of bone loss, especially in postmenopausal women.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then repeatedly losing and regaining significant amounts of weight can also be detrimental. Yeah, our bones respond best to a consistent environment.
So it's all about consistency.
Yes, consistency is key.
With everything.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then following very restrictive low-calorie diets, especially those under 1,000 calories a day, can also lead to bone density loss. That was highlighted by Healthline. And it's generally recommended to aim for at least 1,200 calories a day.
Okay.
To maintain a balanced dietary intake. And then, of course, avoiding tobacco use in all forms. Smoking and vaping is really important.
Yeah.
As the Mayo Clinic states that it can weaken bones. And limiting alcohol consumption is important, too.
Yeah.
The Mayo Clinic advises no more than 1 drink a day for women and 2 for men.
Okay.
Because excessive alcohol intake can increase your risk of osteoporosis.
So, we always hear about these healthy lifestyle habits.
Right.
But they're important for so many different aspects of our health.
They really are.
Including our bone health.
It all ties together.
It all ties together.
It's a holistic picture.
Awesome. Okay, so are there any other specific considerations that we should be aware of, like maybe medications or other health conditions?
Yeah, the Mayo Clinic emphasizes that certain medications can actually impact bone health.
Oh.
So these include hormone therapies used in cancer treatment, some medications for seizures, thyroid conditions, glucocorticoid steroids, SSRIs, and proton pump inhibitors.
So if anyone is on any of those medications,
yes,
long term, it's probably a good idea to talk to their doctor.
Definitely talk to your healthcare provider.
Okay.
And then certain medical conditions can also play a role, like eating disorders, thyroid diseases, inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and Cushing syndrome.
Okay.
These can all increase the risk of bone loss.
So it's really important to get personalized advice from your doctor.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so wow, we have really taken a deep dive into bone health.
We have.
I just want to quickly recap some of the things that we talked about. So prioritizing vegetables in your diet, engaging in both strength training and weight-bearing exercises.
Yeah.
Getting enough protein, spreading out your calcium intake, making sure you're getting enough vitamin D and K, avoiding restrictive diets, maintaining a healthy weight, and not forgetting about magnesium, zinc, and omega-3s.
Those are the key takeaways.
It's a lot.
It is.
But it's all really important for bone health.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that building and maintaining strong bones is a lifelong endeavor.
That's a good point.
It's never too early or too late to start incorporating these healthy habits.
Yeah, we're always remodeling our bones.
Exactly.
So it's never too late to start.
Never too late.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And for sharing your expertise.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you to everyone for listening. Before we go, if you're finding these deep dives valuable and informative, please hit that like button. It really helps us reach more people. And if you want to stay up to date with all of our explorations into health and well-being, Be sure to subscribe to the Detox Health YouTube channel. We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.